Hello and welcome back. So in the first video, we deployed all of the cloud resources we need to begin deploying a HPC cluster on Microsoft Azure. Now we want to configure Azure CycleCloud. Now Azure CycleCloud is Microsoft Azure's HPC management and orchestration service. And in order to begin configuring it, we need to visit the IP address of the virtual machine we deployed in the last video. So I've already done that, and if we go to this web tab, we will see that we have an error. And this error comes up because we haven't set up an SSL certificate on our CycleCloud virtual machine. This is something that can be dealt with later on. For now, we can ignore this, and we can begin configuring. So for this first page, we can leave everything as default. We can then agree to the software license agreement. We will then be prompted to add an administrator user. So I'm going to call the user cycleadmin. I'm going to create a password, repeat the password. I'm then going to copy the SSH key we created in the last video and paste it into this box. We can then click Done. And we will now be prompted to connect CycleCloud to our Azure subscription. And I'm going to call the connection Azure. The subscription ID has already been put in, so we just need to validate credentials. And that succeeded. We need a location. I'm going to choose West Europe, like I did in the last video. For resource group, we want to select the resource group we created in the last video. And then we want to create a storage account. Now, this storage account will be used by CycleCloud to store provisioning scripts for virtual machines on the HPC cluster. I'm going to call the storage account demo storage, and then we need a unique number string to make sure it's unique. After that, we can click Save. So let's click Save. And we now need to wait a couple of minutes for the connection to set up. Okay, so a couple of minutes have passed. The connection is set up. We can click on Back to Clusters and we can start configuring our HPC cluster. Now there are many choices. I'm going to be doing a Slurm cluster today, so let's select that. I'm going to name it Demo Cluster. In the next tab, I'm going to change the HPC partition. So there are two partitions by default, HPC and HTC. I'm going to change HPC to a HC44 series virtual machine. So let's just find that. There you go. And then we click Apply. Now, a HC44 series virtual machine is based on an Intel Xeon processor, which is scalable. And it is especially designed for high-performance compute on Microsoft Azure. In the next section, we can increase the maximum number of HPC cores and HTC cores, and we can also increase the maximum number of virtual machines per scale set. Now, for cores, the maximum number of cores will determine how many cores can be used at any one time on the whole HPC cluster. For scale sets, this will determine how many cores can be used at any one time for a HPC job. So I'm not going to change anything there because it's not necessary today, but I am going to select the subnet we created in the last video and then move on to the next tab. There is nothing to change here because by default and today we are going to be using the SSD drive of the scheduler or master node as our shared file system. There are other options and I refer you to the documentation to find out more about those. In the next tab, we can choose the version of Slurm to use. I'm going to be using Slurm 20. We can configure job accounting, which is very useful, but we won't be using job accounting today, so I'm going to leave that as is. And then finally, Cloud Init isn't something we're going to be using today. However, it allows you to run custom scripts on different virtual machines as they are booted. So this could be just on the scheduler or master node. It could be for virtual machines in the HPC partition only or in the HTC partition only. It's up to you. Okay, so we can then save. And we are now ready to start our HPC cluster. Now, this is going to take a couple of minutes. So I will see you in a couple of minutes. So let's click start first and click OK. So once the HPC cluster has started, this scheduler down here will go green, and we can then find its IP address by clicking on connect. Now, this brings us to the end of the second video. In the final video, we will log in to that scheduler node and we will have a quick look around and we will submit a job. So see you in the next video.